Ulduar has been out already for a little over a month and a half, and already there's some potential leaks of some massive nerfs coming to this raid. Now, this is purely speculation and why I wasn't planning on covering this, but it is kind of getting quite a bit of traction, so we're gonna talk about this today. And not only that, but we got some huge news with the actual free transfers from the major realms. Firemaw to Gehenna on EU and Gehenna to Firemaw, as well as Benediction to Faerlina and Faerlina to Benediction on NA. And these are absolutely the mega servers for the regions. Benediction, Faerlina, Gehenna, and Firemaw are all one faction essentially, and they're getting massive transfers happening. The largest one is probably from Firemaw EU to Gehenna, so that a lot of the top alliance guilds can actually switch over to being Horde, because Horde does have stronger ratios for PvE and speedrunning. And because of this, they're already freezing the transfers from Firemaw to Gehenna, but it doesn't look like just yet transfers will be frozen anywhere else. But the bigger news is, like I mentioned before, potential leaks of massive Ulduar nerfs. Now, there's a ton of stories on Reddit and forums of people struggling to actually be able to clear Ulduar. And we can also see this with progress throughout the raid, where there's only less than 1,000 people who have full cleared every single boss, including Yogg Zero and Algalon. And that means that out of every single guild in the entire world, there is a ton of guilds out here that are struggling to get past the normal modes and move on to those hard modes. Now, I personally get it. I completely understand. This raid is not easy compared to everything else we've ever had to deal with, even with Sunwell being a lot easier than this raid. And if we look at the numbers, we even struggled less with pre-nerf Lady Vashj. But it is one of the most fun raids, and we also do have the opportunity to clear it on both normal and hard mode, which makes things a little bit more like there's less gatekeeping, I would say, but maybe that's more of just a base take. So in all actuality, there are a lot of people I've heard of losing interest so far in the raid because they're struggling to keep members, guilds are struggling to clear the hard modes, and a lot of the cracks have seemed to kind of start widening now that you have to deal with more mechanics. And this is totally something that should be expected in this raid. But the nerfs that we're gonna go over, at least show really quickly right now, seem a little bit extreme. So much so that I have a sneaking suspicion that if they are true in any way, then I don't think they will be coming anytime soon, not until we are basically in Trial of the Crusader. So I heard about these nerfs from Scotty J's video today, and a lot of people pinging me about it. So shout out to Scotty J, make sure you check it out. I'll link to his video in the description, and he learned about them from Classic Go, who actually talked about it on his podcast. So just looking at it from the start, we have things like Yogg Saron actually having its damage and HP fully reduced by 25%. If these rumors are true, it'll also completely remove the Constrictor tentacles. Clouds that roam are now going to be significantly slower, so people running into clouds in phase 1 won't really be an issue. Corrupted tentacles will only be able to cast 2 schools of magic. There's a lot less to interrupt, a lot less to maybe dispel or decurse, and Brain Link can be broken as you run away from people. These are just some of the nerfs, but if we look at some of the crazier ones, it would be like Algalon having its HP reduced by 40%, completely getting rid of the 1 hour timer to kill this boss. Black holes do 50% less damage. His melee damage would also be reduced, and Quantum Strike would happen less frequently. So this would basically make it so that Algalon, the hardest boss in this raid, this boss would be essentially made to be a joke. Now, if you don't remember, this totally happened back in phase 2 in TBC, where they giga nerfed basically every single fight to make it so that you fully could kill every boss without even really having to deal with any of the mechanics. Everything would basically fall over, and this would completely change the actual DPS meta. Now, if the fights are significantly shorter, Unholy DKs are back kind of on top, which I'm not necessarily upset about, but it would completely end any sort of speedrunning, which is just now starting if you're paying attention to the speedrunning scene. And I will be covering all sorts of speedruns over on my Twitch channel, but when this happened back in phase 2 in TBC, the same thing happened. Everybody just kind of got over it. People were actually more upset that they finally killed the boss when they almost had them down the week before, then they were excited that they were actually able to clear everything. So there was more of a backlash. And that's also why I think Blizzard would actually wait until something like the actual release of Trial of the Crusader to do any sort of nerfs. And if they do it with Trial of the Crusader, this would mean that it would be easier to go back into Ulduar and full clear the raid and take a lot less time, so you didn't have to have a ridiculously long raid week. And this would be kind of a nice thing. It's a quality of life thing that I'm totally okay with. But if we see 40% nerfs to some of these bosses, Ulduar as a longer phase will fizzle out pretty quickly, unfortunately. I think a lot of the people playing right now are either having a ton of fun either blasting through the raid or a ton of fun progressing through it. Although I do understand a lot of frustrations that can be had if you're not able to kill some of the bosses, because there's a lot more going on right now, and it's definitely can be pretty frustrating banging your head against the wall. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to touch on this very quickly. Shout out to Classico and Scotty J, who both actually pushed out this information. We'll have to see if these leaks are true. I'm curious what you guys think of Phase 2 and Ulduar, so let me know in the comments, and a couple more parse guides will be coming soon, so stay tuned for that.